The Democrats continue to claim that Trump is weaponizing the FBI. He isn't. It's already been weaponized. It was weaponized against the GOP. And this report about the congressional baseball shooting in 2017 that Kash Patel came out with, it just, it's stupid that they were to have hidden the information, to claim that this guy was trying to commit self deletion by cop is idiotic. This man's name was James Hodgkinson. He was a fanatical supporter of Bernie. And this, you know, is normal. We're seeing this violence by the Democrat Party constantly. He had a record of domestic violence, so why in the world was he allowed to be able to get? He had an SKS 9mm Smith & Wesson MP Shield semi-automatic pistol. 6 people were injured in this attack. House Majority Whip Steve Scalise, U.S. Capitol Police Officer Crystal Griner, Congressional aide Zach Barth, and lobbyist Matt Micah. They were injured by this guy. And thankfully, he was taken out. But let's let you hear what the Republicans have to say about what is going on in this whole thing.
Howdy, y'all. This is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. What we have here is a channel to communicate. I want you folks to be thinking by the time you leave my videos. Why? Because I'm tired of people talking via what other people tell them to think. So, watch my video and enjoy the chance to think for yourself.
Joining me now is Arkansas Congressman Rick Crawford, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee and a member of the House Transportation Committee. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. Can you tell us a little about that intelligence report as well as what went on here?
Yeah, so yesterday we released a report on the baseball shooting that, again, it was a report. It wasn't a reinvestigation of the investigation. It was a report on the investigation. Let me just tell you that it took us 8 years to get that. But for Director Patel committing to us that he would have it to us, we would still be waiting. I mean, Director Patel came in and he has kind of pulled the curtain back, and he's going to do what he can to be as transparent with us as possible, and that's exactly what he did. So we were able to look at that report and that investigation rather, and turn out our own report, and showed really a lot of real flaws with the investigative process, and it kind of underscores the problem that exists in the IC in particular with regard to shortcuts and analytic integrity and political bias and narrative-driven fact-finding and things of that nature. So it was a pretty exhaustive report that we turned out yesterday.
Well, that's really unfortunate. I mean, your committee found that the FBI failed in its investigation of that 2017 congressional baseball shooting. They downplayed the gunman's anti-Republican motives. Even Louisiana Congressman Steve Scalise and 3 others were shot. The gunman was shot by police and later died, but this report stated that the FBI used false statements, manipulation of known facts, biased and butchered analysis to support a narrative that the shooter, James Hodgkinson, committed suicide by cops without any nexus to domestic terrorism, Mr. Chairman. How is this allowed? So there was no connection to terrorism initially, and now we see completely different narrative in this report?
Well, first off, suicide by cop narrative was, on its face, was wrong because there were no uniformed police officers present when the shooting started. So he was there, and we knew that he had a manifesto on his person. He had a list of other Republican members in his pocket. And he was, engaged in a long-term, a 10-minute firefight And in a firefight, 10 minutes is a long time. That was not suicide by cop, and any reasonable person would have dismissed that immediately. And so they stuck with that narrative until 2021. In May of 2021, for whatever reason, there was no new information introduced in the investigation, but they decided in May of 2021 to say, you know, if we had it to do over again, maybe we would consider that there might be a nexus to domestic terrorism. That's a problem. The fact that it took them 4 years to come to that conclusion and without any new information in the investigation. So there was this investigation is chock full of questionable conclusions and really the methods that they used and the political bias that was demonstrated in this is just unconscionable.
I mean, it really is, and the whole thing is unconscionable. How are we supposed to trust our elected leaders if it's all lies because of their, insistence on keeping their grip on power? That's all this is about.
You know, I represent roughly 800,000 constituents, and I'm their voice. I'm the one that is supposed to be up here trying to be able to go back to them and say, yeah, you can trust the intelligence community. But I can't do that. I can't go back to my constituents and say that our federal law enforcement and our intelligence community, we don't trust them. We want to get to a point where we can say that we trust the IC. It's important that we have that relationship, that they're doing the job that we sent them there to do for us, and that our federal law enforcement is also equally yoked in that effort. And we can't right now say that. Now, we've got some new leadership, and I'm very encouraged by that across federal law enforcement and the IC. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to report back in a year or two that, what we've seen a sea change. We can now say that we're reestablishing that relationship of trust.
Well, I hope so. I mean, it's all been a bunch of lies, so, beginning with Russia collusion. And I don't know where this started, but the trust and credibility of the intelligence community has been just ripped apart. But I got to get to the reconciliation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Chairman Crawford, for leading this issue and for your support of this oversight review. The American people deserve a government that is accountable and transparent. Oversight of the intelligence community is intended to ensure those in that community are held to this same standard. As the chairman of the Oversight and Investigations Subcommittee, there is no greater priority than ensuring elements of the IC are employing proper investigative and analytic tradecraft independent of political considerations. That is why we worked around the clock to review the case file provided by Director Patel and publish this vital oversight report just weeks later. My subcommittee is conducting several ongoing investigations and oversight initiatives with a common thread. Intelligence analysis and assessments are falling short of the objectivity and integrity standards required by law. As Chairman Crawford already stated, it is extremely concerning that the FBI had enough confidence in their shoddy investigative efforts to conclude that this was, quote, suicide by cop and close this file. If you read the report, you will see this is absolutely ridiculous. Most notably, our report finds that there were no hard facts to support the FBI's suicide by cop conclusion. Based on our review of 3,000 plus pages provided to the committee, the only reasonable and, quite frankly, the very obvious determination was that this was an act of domestic terrorism. Despite those clear and contrary facts indicating domestic terrorism, the FBI's investigative efforts and intelligence analysis strained to reinforce this predetermined suicide by cop narrative. For example, to support the FBI analysis that this shooter conducted an opportunistic act of suicide by cop, the FBI analysis refers to comments by a family member speculating at the possibility based on a lack of significant number of fatalities. He didn't think that enough people died for that to be the case. Aside from being incredibly offensive to the 4 victims shot by the attacker, this analysis fails to note that the shooting began, there were absolutely no uniformed police officers anywhere around visible to the shooter. Further, the FBI analysis claimed that the shooter moved toward the gunfire. There was absolutely no support for this claim in the case file. The FBI did not conduct critical interviews with victims and eyewitnesses. As a result, no witnesses were given an opportunity to contradict this theory. On the other hand, the media did interview the eyewitnesses, and they found that the shooter targeted victims from a concealed position in order to protect himself. Finally, our report finds that the FBI's press release was used to mislead and influence public opinion. For example, the FBI told the public that the photos the shooter had taken at the baseball field, quote, did not represent surveillance of intended targets. Yet, the internal official report that we reviewed, the case file states, quote, the FBI assesses photos may indicate possible probing and casing. In addition, the FBI used deceptive language to hide the fact that the shooter had a handwritten manifesto, which was found in his van, indicating his real motive. His real motive was assassinating Republican congressmen to, quote, win back the power of the people. Regardless of political party, we must all stand united against political violence of any kind and condemn this violent attack as what it really was, an act of domestic terrorism. While I am deeply disappointed by the conduct of the FBI under Acting Director McCabe in 2017, I am encouraged by the transparency shown by Director Patel. I will continue to work with Chairman Crawford to bring integrity, objectivity, and accountability back to the FBI and the rest of the intelligence community. Long story short, we have a long way to go to rebuild and reestablish the trust and the confidence of the American people in the FBI, the DOJ, and our intelligence community. This starts that process. Thank you. And with that, I will turn it over to Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan to say a few words.
We have an FBI that is needing to be cleaned up. I am pretty certain that there are good people within the FBI that are trying to do their job. I know people who want to join the FBI that are making it their life goal so that they can do good for this country. The police doing what they were doing at that event, the Capitol Police officer that got injured and the other Capitol Police, they did their job, and they can pretty much be considered heroes. But to have the police and the FBI claim that this guy was just doing this so that he could be taken out by the cops is laughable. This guy had a manifesto. This guy had surveillance photos. This guy, pretty much everything that any terrorist would have, this guy had. This is sickening to think that this is what continues to go on in this country. Now, David Bailey, another Capitol Police officer, was injured. Griner was shot in the ankle. Bailey was treated and released. Minor injury, not caused by gunfire. Zach Barth shot in the calf. He was treated, hospital, and released. Representative Williams sprained his ankle while jumping into a dugout. And Steve Scalise was the man that was injured the most. He was shot in the hip, evacuated by the U.S. Park Police helicopter to MedStar, Washington Hospital Center, where he underwent surgery. Bullet struck his hip, traveled across his pelvis, fracturing bones, injuring internal organs, and causing severe bleeding. He was critically wounded in this. Matt Micah, Tyson's food lobbyist, which I'm not a real big fan of lobbyists all the time, but not in this case. He shouldn't have, I don't believe that he should have been a target either. Was shot multiple times in the chest and arm, injuring his lungs, sternum, and ribs. Former legislative assistant to Congressman Tim Walberg and Dave Camp, both Republicans from Michigan. He was most severely wounded, taken to George Washington University Hospital via ambulance, where he underwent surgery for his injuries. Critical condition immediately following surgery. So he lived, but this could have been so much worse. And the FBI are claiming, oh, this guy was just trying to be taken out by the cops. This is pathetic. This really is pathetic. This has been Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Y'all have a good day now. Bye. So, folks, that's the story that I wanted to bring you on this video. And I just wanted to say thank you again for coming by. Hit like, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff if you don't mind. Help me out. So, y'all have a good day now. Bye.